Hello and welcome to the 5-Minute Film Club. This week I am looking back at the much maligned 2001 sci-fi fairy tale AI, directed by Steven Spielberg. I saw this in the cinema back in 2001 with my friend Robert, and actually I haven't seen it since. Based on a short story by Brian Aldiss, Super Toys Last All Summer Long, AI shows us a dystopian future where population control is enforced and robots, or mechas as they are called, are commonplace. One troubled family receives a new form of mecha, a realistic child, David, who when imprinted upon does genuinely feel love for his mummy, but also rejection. When cast off into the wild, David and his little toy bear Teddy set off on an adventure to become real and win his mother's affection back. This film started as a passion project by Stanley Kubrick, who worked on the film for over 13 years before deciding that perhaps the story was actually a little bit closer to his friend's sensibilities. And so he offered to produce the film while Steven Spielberg directed. Sadly, Stanley Kubrick died in 1999 before production even started. However, his wife and production team asked Spielberg if he would go ahead and complete the project. Kubrick and Spielberg obviously shared an immense passion for films, but their resulting work I don't think could be more different. Kubrick's I have always found a bit cold, whereas Spielberg is often slapped with the label of being too sentimental with his films. And so, what comes through is a very strange mix of the two. For me, the first hour of the film, dealing with David's integration and subsequent casting out, feels reminiscent to his earlier classics, such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., and I really enjoyed it. Now, where the film actually loses it for me is the appearance of Gigolo Joe, played by Jude Law. The whole film shifts in tone into a more unstable territory. Before he died, Kubrick had worked through a script with writer Ian Watson and also done a ton of conception art. Now, if you're a fan of the visuals of Clockwork Orange or 2001, then there are feasts to be seen, from the mouth-shaped bridge and also all the lewd neon signs of Rouge City. It all looks great and very reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick's work. However, story-wise, it feels a little baggy. It goes on too long and we kind of lose the focus of David, I think, a little bit. And then I really feel that it picks up again when David reaches the remains of New York City and eventually meets his creator, played by William Hurt. Now, the one thing about this film that really stuck at the back of critics' throats when it first came out was its ending. And the film does appear to have two of them. One that feels more like Stanley Kubrick, and the second one that definitely feels like Spielberg's hands. The story, aside from being inspired by Aldiss's short story, takes an awful lot from Pinocchio. David is desperate to become a real boy, and the only way he knows how to do this is via the story of Pinocchio and to find the blue fairy. While in New York, he actually does find it, submerged underneath New York, and he begins to plead with it to let him become a real boy. And slowly, we fade to black. Then, cut forward 2,000 years into the future. We are now in another great ice age and the whole of humanity has been wiped out, only to be replaced by the robots that we first created. With this ending, I do feel we get a more complete resolution to the story. And its tone and nature and everything about it feels like it's from Spielberg. However, Spielberg has actually called out people who say this is just Spielberg getting too sentimental. Well, actually, he says it was in the original treatment, first written by Ian Watson, while Kubrick was working on the film. And I find that incredibly interesting, that throughout of all of Kubrick's films, we never have an ending quite like this. I personally don't have a problem with it at all. I enjoy Spielberg's films, and this feels like a perfect bookend, almost, to the opening hour that I enjoyed so much. Plus, the music, throughout the entire film, but specifically this final section by John Williams is absolutely sublime. I don't think you're going to have a problem with the ending if you've managed to get to this point in the film without turning off completely. At times, Spielberg feels free and is able to tell the story the way he wants it. And then at other times you feel that he's really working through an almost tribute to his friend. It's fair enough. He talks in interviews about using a wider camera lens, which Kubrick was famous for, in order to let Kubrick do some of the work of this film. But even if this is a lesser Spielberg, it still has a lot on offer to make it an interesting watch. Hello, thank you very much for watching. It was a difficult film to review, this one, just because of the nature of the pre-production and what actually finally ends up on screen. I don't think it's a bad film, I just think it does feel very compromised. But I think if you're considering doing a Kubrick marathon, then you have to include AI at the end of it. Now, I have the book here, and I am going to pick next week's film. And it is going to be Amelie. So please tune in next week when I will be looking back at Amelie.